Poke the Bear is brought to you by Prize Picks and the Game Time app.
And welcome into Poke the Bear episode 255, presented by Prize Picks and Game Time Tickets. My name is Conor Ryan, and once again, we are joined by 98.5 The Sports Hub's Ty Anderson and his cat Doom. How are you guys both doing?
What's going on? I'm doing great. Doom, I think, is doing great as well. She doesn't really speak English, though, so it's kind of hard to know. But I think she's doing all right. She's just chilling. About a minute ago when I was setting up, she was staring at the camera. So maybe we get that version of her as well before the show is over.
Is she going to give like a section here talking about like Jeremy Swayman and the contract, or does she have no thoughts on that? Is she over like most of us are?
She's just really focused on the offensive production at this point. She doesn't really care about the goaltending. She just wonders if they're going to have enough secondary scoring, which is a fair take in my opinion.
Doom has the right takes there, that's for sure. No, we have a really good episode on tap for you guys today. Have a mailbag episode, so shout out to all of our loyal listeners and dedicated Bruins fans on X, Twitter, whatever it's called, who sent along a whole bunch of different questions for us. They're not all about Jeremy Swayman. They're hitting on all, I think, the important topics as we get ready for the start of captain's practice next week, thankfully. But before we dive into that, unfortunately, we have to start this podcast on a very sad and heartbreaking note, obviously with the passing of Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau Thursday evening. And I'll keep this brief just because there's a lot more people who can better and definitely more eloquently speak to the kind of people they were and just the magnitude of this loss. But I mean, Ty, it's just news that doesn't really kind of feel real when you digest it and just take it all in of just how tragic and unnecessary all this news is. I mean, Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew, both incredible hockey players. I think we both saw him a whole lot at BC. Saw him beat a lot of my Terriers over the years, and just a special player. Like, even if I don't think you were a diehard hockey fan, a guy like Johnny Gaudreau is a guy you pay tickets to go see. Just every single time he's on the ice, made something special happen, and that takes a very special player and athlete to do that. But this is beyond hockey, right? I mean, these are two people with families and an incredible network of people who loved and cherished them so very much that are gone now for a senseless reason. And it's just awful. I'll say, again, please don't drink and drive. Don't be an asshole. Please just call the fucking Uber, any of those things, because the consequences are absolutely devastating. And you've got this awful news now surrounding these two very special people. So, I mean, there's not much more you can say, right? It's awful all around, and we're sending plenty of strength and love to the Gaudreau family, obviously, during this time, and everyone else who's impacted by this tragedy. It's awful.
Yeah, no, it's the worst news. It was one of those things where, like, you're watching it unfold on Twitter. Like, I didn't know. Like, Evan texted us and said, "Have you heard about this?" And I was like, "No." And went online. You're seeing it, and you're seeing such like a. You're seeing all like the updates and the non-updates from people who cover the Blue Jackets, and and it was tough because it's like, okay, what is you're watching it all unfold in real time, and you're saying, man, I hope everybody is wrong here. You know what I mean? Like, that's like a weird position to be in. What I would say is that, like, to your point, Johnny Gaudreau is somebody who, if you weren't a hockey fan, I would show you his highlights, because I would say, look at this guy. He's 5'6", probably 145 pounds, and the way he could just dangle, the puck on a string and get through traffic and create these electric plays, like, it was incredible. And so, and I think it's funny because now you're seeing, he wasn't the first, obviously, but now you're seeing guys that are smaller. Growing up, you had Brian Giunta and even Nathan Gerbe, who wasn't a scorer, but he was a smaller guy. Mike Camilleri, but Johnny Gaudreau, I think, paved the way for a lot of these younger players that we're seeing now that are not getting turned away because they're 5'7" or 5'6" and 165 pounds. Like, it's like, no, you watched him, and now I can do that too. Like, and so I think that's what's really cool and impressive about his legacy, especially as the game continues to trend in the direction it is. It's like players like Johnny Gaudreau are now way more commonplace than they were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And so I think what's really interesting is that, like, he's a guy that just like the legacy and everything he did was really remarkable for such a short career. When you think of what he had in front of him, but the legacy is going to be there forever. So that's one thing that I think, you can really say is incredible and speaks to him as a player and a person.
Absolutely. No, it's unimaginable loss. The poor, the Blue Jackets as well, who have just had, unfortunately, so many different tragedies kind of fall their way the last couple of years. So sending, our best wishes and love to the Gaudreau family, Blue Jackets, and again, the BC community, hockey, every single person I think was impacted by, just how special a person both the Gaudreaus were on and off the ice. And it says quite a bit about them that you're able to build kind of this network and connection of, admiration, love, respect, all those things in such a short, unfortunately tragic amount of time. So again, we're sending our best to the Gaudreau family during this, very, very tragic time. And then, I think it was important to, address that just leading off here, Ty, but we will kind of change gears a little bit and look a little bit ahead now, focusing in on the Bruins. And as I said, leading off, we got a lot of great questions from our loyal listeners on X, did the mailbag, reached out to a few people and got a few different questions. Do you want to get the Jeremy Swayman one out of the way first? I feel like we've been talking a whole lot about that.
Yeah, I'm getting tired of doing podcasts where we rehash the same 3 points that, we can't refute or confirm or deny. Let's bang that out because I also have a thought on the situation as well.
Absolutely. So this one is from Sean McKeon, who said, based on recent reports, interviews, what number do you predict the Sway AAV coming in at? I'll let you lead off there, Ty.
Yeah. So what I can tell you is based on what I've heard, the Bruins have yet to make a max term offer. Or if they have, it was rejected rather quickly. So with that in mind, I think we're talking probably a 4 or 5 year deal as of right now. So if you do that, the question then becomes, okay, well, what gives? Is it AAV? Is it like something's got to give, right? At a certain point. Right. That's how every negotiation goes. Now, I wonder if you go lower, now that gets him closer to UFA status, which I don't think you want to mess around with personally. But if that is the case, if you're the Bruins, you're giving up something there. You're saying, hey, man, we're letting 4 prime years go off the board here, 3 or 4 prime years. So does that get the cap hit lower? Now, I've been of the belief that 8 to 8.5 is where this is going to land. I think the Bruins be happy with the Saros contract or just below it. I don't know if that's going to happen. But I think probably like 8 to 8.5. The Bruins are mindful of they want to have some space to make some additions after having 2 straight years of having to basically, push the bill off, so to speak. Like, they went to LTIR in 2023, as we all know. Last year, they had like $11 in cap space pretty much all year. It's pretty brutal. So I think they want to be mindful of that and have some space left over to open the season, I would imagine.
Yeah, no, I agree in terms of, it does feel like 8.5 is kind of the sweet spot. I don't think it's something where you're looking at that realm of 9+ or anything like that. I mean, who the hell knows? There's been a couple of up and down roller coasters with this negotiation. It does feel like, again, not going to DEFCON 1 yet. I think we're still waiting till we actually get to training camp and all parties are there before we, dive into any more additional drama with it. But 8.5 does feel like kind of the sweet spot where it resets kind of the goalie market, which is something that he's been very cognizant about. You give this guy obviously a sizable, pay raise while hopefully locking him in long term. But that is kind of the question, right? Like, if it's 8.5, do you feel good if you're the Bruins that, let's say it's 8.5, but it's 4 or 5 years? Probably don't feel great, right? Because you're already kind of not overpaying, but you're kind of paying with the expectation of future performance, right? But if it's 4 or 5 years, you're like, well, shit, the bill's going to come due again in a couple of years. Where all of a sudden, if Shesterkin and whatever he's a free agent 2 years, if he's getting like 11.5, What happens if Swayman has, 2 or 3 Vezina finalist nods during that? What happens if he wins a cup or something like that? Like, I feel like it's almost like you want to get it done. That's the most important thing, but it's almost like a Pyrrhic victory if it's 8.5 by 4 or 5, because it's like, we're going to do this right down the road again.
Yeah, and what's the pipeline looking behind him, right? Like, we've talked about Brandon Bussey, we've talked about Michael DiPietro to a slight degree. Both those guys project as what? At their ceiling, probably 1Bs, and that's assuming everything hits, right? Like, DiPietro, he's 24. His NHL showings have been kind of but you're starting to see the progress in the Bruins system where he just had his best year of his career, in their minor league system. So, like, you don't want to put the horse before the cart there and say, oh, we got this guy too. But, like, what's the pipeline like behind him? I think probably Philip Svedback out of Providence College is probably your next best thing that you would have in the pipeline. And I might be forgetting somebody right now, but I think that's kind of what they have right now in terms of non-pro goalie prospects. And so when you look at it that way, it's like, okay, well, there's nobody knocking at the door. If you were to sign him for 8 years right now, there's nobody that you can sit there and go, oh, yeah, no, that guy, well, you can't give him 8 years because you got this guy coming. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like it's, in 2013, when they signed Tuukka Rask to that contract for 8 years, yeah, they were a year removed from drafting Malcolm Subban, but nobody knew what he was going to be at that point. Right. They're kind of in a similar boat here, in my opinion. So that's why I would sign him, long term. I'd get the max term out of this, man, because I agree with you that with the way the cap is going, forget Igor making 11 or 12. You might be talking about, like, your Jordan Binningtons and your, like who else? It's just a run of the mill kind of goaltender.
Ass goalies.
Yeah, like, you might be talking about those guys making $7 million, right? Like, just the way that the cap, the ceiling is going to go. And that's why I look at it percentages versus, actual cap hit, right? And that's what makes it hard, because that cap ceiling is going to go up so tremendously these next couple of years. And so, but I'd want him down for the 8 years. I wouldn't dick around here. I would just get it done for 8 years. Because the odds are that the contract is going to age more like the Marchand contract than say the, what's a contract that's just like you're looking at, you're like, ugh, like I can't think of
anything the Seattle Kraken signed this past year other than Beniers. Yeah. That's going to be a great deal. But Chandler Stevenson, I'm like, what the fuck are you guys doing?
Yeah, it's like, okay, maybe like the Aaron Ekblad contract where you're like, oh, this didn't age the way that it probably should have. Yeah. I think that's the contract I'm thinking of. I'm sorry if I'm wrong. It's early. But no, like I would just try to get it done. Now, my overall point on this though, Connor, and I want to get your take on this too. Do you just outright believe that he wants $10 million a year?
No, I mean, I also think it's part of it's funny, Ty. It's called a contract negotiation. So usually, if you're going in, I don't watch Mad Men. I don't watch I don't watch Suits. I don't really know how this all works. Usually, when I crunch numbers, it's cap friendly. But generally, when you go into a negotiation, you aim high, knowing full well it's not going to happen, and then you find the middle ground. You don't go with what you're fine with it being the final result. I think that's usually how it works. So I can't see it being 10. Like, even if it is, it's one where it's all right. It's you set the very high bar, and then full well. Like, I don't think this guy is going into it with 44 games played as his largest workload, being like, I'm ready to get paid like Bobrovsky. Like, it's one thing to talk about, as he did on the Shut Up Mark podcast, I believe, which actually was a very good interview. Him talking about the cap jumping up and like the goalie market, all these things that are very cognizant. Like, you factor that in when the final payout is 8.5, which again kind of sets the new floor, all those kinds of things. But like, I don't see, people, I think, going in with the expectation that he wants 10, he's holding out for 10, or again, we're hitting kind of silly season in terms of, what this actual payout is. I find kind of confusing because again, it's a negotiation. It's how it works. Every contract, I'm sure every also contract in which the Bruins, I think people also, like, Bruins fans are so used to like hometown discounts that I'm sure they probably all thought it would be like the player would come up to like the Bruins, be like, no, like, here, I'll sign for $6.25 million. It's like, no, it's negotiate. You find the middle ground. You find ways to kind of bridge the gap there, but I'm not I don't think that he's asking for 10 million. I think it's what you do at the start of this thing when it's your first big payday and you factor in those things. But I don't think he's realistically expecting a double-digit payout moving forward.
Yeah, and I think the other part of that too is that that just feels to me personally, that feels like a Bruins leak, so to speak. Like they've been getting killed all
Yeah.
summer for not getting him signed, for not having this done by now. And what's the quickest way to get people to kind of change their perception of the situation? Oh, well, he wants 10 million. Oh, he wants 10 million. Just look at the replies now. When people talk about Swayman now, look at how
people want
tenor has
Tuukka
changed. Right. Like the tenor has changed and people are starting to crush him now online, saying he's selfish, he's not part of the team. Like, well, first of all, stop with that nonsense, because anyone who's ever negotiated a contract isn't like, you know what? Pay me the least. Like,
Yeah.
so I understand it from that
business.
standpoint. Yes, exactly. But or B rather, I'm not taking that as gospel, because I smell a rat there. I do. That doesn't seem like the Jeremy Swayman that I know, the one that we know, who has been like so about staying here, so about being a Bruin, so about winning a Stanley Cup here. Yeah, you can be mindful of your own market and the comps and where the cap is going and all of that. But I don't think that you're entering a negotiation saying 10 mil or nothing, 10 mil or nothing. Like, I don't think that's how this thing is working right now. And so, you know what I would say to that? Okay, he probably wants 10 mil. And now let's talk to the Swayman camp, and they're going to tell me that they want to pay him 5 mil. And I'm going to go, it's almost like you guys should meet in the middle. And that's what's going to ultimately happen here. So I just I don't trust that one as like complete gospel. It's not a knock on Rich Keefe. It's not a knock on anyone who's believing it. It's just, it doesn't pass my own personal smell test.
Yeah.
And so I just have my doubts there a little bit. And yeah, to your point, you start high, you come a little bit lower. The other part of that, and you mentioned the hometown discount, and I find this really intriguing, is on the Sports Hub, we were playing clips this week of Mike Lombardi. Does a podcast now where he talks about how things were, the GM, it's like the GM shuffle, I think it is.
Yeah.
But he was talking about how things were run in New England, where, a guy would want this kind of value on his next contract, and the Patriots could say to him, you want to make more than Tom Brady? We can't do that.
Yeah.
The Bruins don't really have that anymore. It used to be, well, we have Bergeron. You can't make more than Bergeron. And if you do, you got to be like a freakishly superstar talent. They don't really have that anymore. Yeah, you can say, well, you're not going to make more than Pastrnak. Okay, that's $11.5 million. I don't think many guys are going to make more than that.
Right.
The only guy who could, I think, is out in Edmonton right now and is a free agent next summer. Maybe that changes that question for them. But the Bruins, I don't think, have that internal comp anymore where it's like, well, we can't pay you more than him. He's our best player, or he's our star cap. Like, he's our captain. Like, he took less, so you got to take less. I think those days are definitely over. I would imagine in Boston, and so now it's it's new terrain for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think the long-term deal is definitely best for the Bruins, right? Even if it's $8.5 million, and maybe that's you're banking on future performance. Which again, like I'm curious to see just how he does this upcoming year in terms of the added workload. But this is a guy that has gotten better pretty much every year. Like, he's made strides. Obviously, the playoffs, his stock is at an all-time high. Like, you feel good, I think, of that not being necessarily a boom or bust contract of giving a guy 8 years. And again, look at just how much the cap's going to jump up. Like, even like Pastrnak, where he's 11.25, right? Like, you look at, like, I think by 2026, 27, I think the cap's going to be at like 104 million or something like that. Like, you're going to have like Jordan Eberle's, like 25, 30 goal, like good players making like 10 million, which is wild to think about. So all of a sudden that contract is going to look pretty good over time. Like, again, it feels like a few years ago, people were like, this Brendan Carlo contract sucks. And it was like, what, 4.1? Yeah. Pretty good for a top 4 steady defenseman who anchors your PK, right? Like, and that's just, with 1 year of the cap jumping up as well. So I do think signing him long-term, Swayman, is the best for the Bruins. Be fast. I will be fast. Like, I'm not fretting again over this being a long-term holdout or anything yet. I think once everyone's in the same room around Warrior and we get closer to training camp, I think it gets hashed out. But when that first tweet pops up where it's going to be like Swayman's face and we know what like an announcement's going to drop in like 5 minutes, I will be fascinated to see the term and the payout, because again, I think 8.5 makes the most sense, but If it's 4 or 5 years, I wouldn't be surprised. If it's 7.75, if it's 8.75, and that's what you need to do to get it over the hump of a long-term deal, I will be fascinated to see how it all kind of plays out.
I bet it happens when I'm in Chicago. I bet I'm going to be on a plane I'm going to be on a plane when it drops, and I'm not going to have my laptop on me, so that'll be fun. Yes. So the other part of it too is like, okay, let's say he does make $9 million, right? Okay, well, your core now, your big three, so to speak, are Pastrnak, McAvoy, and Swayman. They're making a combined, let's just say, $30 million around there. I don't mind that because you have a core foundational piece at every position. You know, you have a forward, you have a D, and you have your goalie. Like that, I think that's better than having half your cap tied up in 4 forwards. Like, right. And that's just kind of like, I feel pretty good about that if I'm the Bruins. But ultimately, I think we're in agreement. Like, the contract's going to probably age better than we think, right? So I think it's better to sign it now. And I think the other part of it too is like, how much more do you got to see? Like, I understand he only won a round. They would have been out in the first round if he didn't play the way he played in the first round. They would have been swept in the second round had he not played the way that he played. The guys love playing for him. They rally around him. They don't have a superstar team, and I know that's been a big thing you hear. I know my pal Mike Felger says it, like, just get a loaded team. You don't need a great goalie. Okay, well, you don't have those guys.
Not the Avs,
Yeah, exactly. So, while it would be great to start from the front and work your way back, they're doing the opposite right now. And I think, arguably, they're in too deep to suddenly pivot and change course. They signed Zadorov. Lindholm is entering the third year of his 8-year contract. Yeah. McAvoy is entering his the beginning to midway point of his contract. Carlo, same thing. Like, you're kind of in too deep to suddenly go, no. Get rid of the goalies, bring in a bunch of high skilled forwards. Like this is what you're doing. You're building from the net out. So do that.
Yeah. It's also like the uncertainty with Swayman beyond like just the growth, which you expect to be an upward trajectory, but like also hell, like he could have another very good encouraging year and have like another 930. Maybe he's just a filthy playoff goalie, which would be great to have, right? Like all of a sudden that contract, I don't care what the hell it is. If you have him sign up long term, and this is a guy that even if maybe he's not a career 919, 920 goalie like Rask was in the regular season, if he's your playoff ace, who gives a shit, right? Like there's also that uncertainty. So
there's a lot of I hate the tenor of the conversation because I just find that trying to analyze goaltending by playoff results is often a fool's errand. Like Braden Holtby. Yeah. Well, Braden Holtby was a bum forever, and then he won a Stanley Cup, and now he's not a bum anymore. Tim Thomas lost 3 Game 7s before, or 2 Game 7s where he won a Stanley Cup and one of the best run in history. So what I would say is that we had never seen Jeremy Swayman get the ball and run with it because he was put in when the team was down 0-2 against Carolina in 2022. He was put in Game 7 after not playing for 17 days, in 2023. And then this year, he gets game 1. He plays all but one of their playoff games, and he's a freaking stud. And so I'm not fiddling around with that. I'm not going, well, I got to see more. No, I saw enough. If we're going to play the game where we're not sold anybody until they win a Stanley Cup, we're probably not going to be sold on a lot of guys. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. There's going to be a lot of guys that we walk away from and go, well, they didn't win the whole thing, so they're a bum. It's just a weird way of doing business.
Yes, absolutely. So actually a very fascinating, insightful Swayman conversation here. And shout out to Sean for setting the table there for us. So thank you again, Sean. We have a few more questions to get through, Ty, but before we do, let's take a quick break here from our good friends over at Prize Picks.
Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the Prize Picks community today. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. One Caleb Williams passing yard gets you 1 win on Prize Picks every week in September. That's right, only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. 4 weeks of free W's. Don't miss this deal on Prize Picks because it's gone when September ends. Prize Picks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money, even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineup stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, your picks are still live. Big questions going into the football season. Will Patrick Mahomes throw for more or less than 267.5 yards one week? Will Jalen Hurts throw for 240.5 passing yards another? Download the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus because it's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Now, back to the show.
Shout out once again to our good friends over at Prize Picks. All right, Ty, our next question is from Marcus Antonelli, who asks, between John Beecher, Matt Poitras, and Mason Lohrei, who do you guys feel will take the biggest step in their sophomore season? What do you think?
I feel like the obvious answer here, if we were doing Vegas betting odds, it's probably Mason Lohrei at minus 300, right? Like he's got to be the pick because he projects to play somewhere in your top 4, most likely. He also projects to potentially quarterback your power play. And so if that happens, I mean, geez, it's going to be hard to beat what he's going to put up. Probably, 10 goals, maybe 30 assists. Like if he has a full-time role and is put in offensive situations, which he should be with the addition of Zadorov, that's going to be a big addition for this team. So I have to go with him.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, again, I think Beecher has more room to grow in the fourth line. I think I really like, especially if out of the gate it's Beecher, Jones, Kastelik, that kind of grouping. Like, you got 3 big body guys that are very physical, 2 guys that are good at face-offs, inject a lot of speed. Like, I think I've mentioned this to you a couple times. Like, you want kind of that, like, Carolina fourth line, back. I know, unfortunately, Jesper Fast, I think, is out for the year with them, but, like, the Fast, the Jordan Martinook, that were those kind of guys who just kind of play with their hair on fire. I think you have traits of that with how this fourth line is. So I'm excited to see Beecher hopefully continue to grow his game. Poitras is kind of a bit of a wild card, right, where you don't really know if he's going to start the year in Providence or what, but that's a guy that, as much as I know, The Athletic has him as like the Bruins' 4th ranked prospect or something like that. I saw that. He literally looked like a legit top, middle 6 player as a 19-year-old last year, but I think you look at the poise, the playmaking he has, even if you want to ease him back into things this upcoming year, he's the guy that by the end of the year you hope is a contributor. So I think there's a lot to be excited about with him, but I agree. Lohrei makes, I think, the most sense. And I think it's why you look at the Zadorov signing and how I think it impacts everyone else. I think you just feel so much better about the way that the Bruins are carving out this path for Lohrei, where it's like, you're not a top 4 guy out of the gate. We're not giving you 19, 20 minutes a night. You're able to, play further down the lineup, work with a guy who should complement your skill set as maybe more of a meat and potatoes defensive player like Andrew Peak. Dunston, you already mentioned they want to give him second power play reps. Hell, if he runs with that, that's a guy that if he ends up being your power play quarterback down the road, a lot to like about how just dynamic he is out there. So I agree. Like, he's a guy that you don't necessarily need to be your featured player on your decor. You've got a lot of very, very talented guys out there, but the runway is there for him that if he plays to his strengths and the Bruins are going to carve out opportunities for him to, tap into his strengths, he can be a guy that can give you 17, 18 minutes a night with, as you said, like 8-9 goals, like 25, 30 points if he's more of an offensive defenseman. Like, there's a lot to like about how I think they've carved out this first full year for him, and you hope he kind of flourishes with it.
Oh, absolutely. And it's interesting. Like, the other guys we talk about, like, I'm almost accepting, like, preemptively that Matthew Poitras is probably going to begin his year in Providence. Like, it just feels like that's kind of, they're going to, like, there's something I've learned about this Bruins team. For better or worse, when they have options, they will exercise those options. They don't care what the fans think, and the fans are going to hate it. but they will use options for as long as they have them. That's typically been how they've operated. And so I feel like he's going to begin the year down there. Now, when it comes to Beecher, when we talk about Johnny Beecher, like last year he put up, 10 points? 7 goals?
Yeah, 7 goals, 3 assists.
And now in the direct comp for him a lot of times has been Sean Corrali. Sean Corrali's first full year, he puts up 14 points. Now, he played the 2017 playoffs, so like you could almost include that as like his first full year, but I don't. Mm-hmm. But anyways, that next year, that 17-18 year, he put up 14 points. The year after that, which I consider his second full NHL season, he had 21 points. So can Beecher challenge for 10 goals, right? Can he challenge for 20-something points? I think that's going to be the big question. Can he move up your lineup? I think that's kind of something that I want to see, because I don't necessarily believe that Johnny Beecher is a fourth liner. I don't believe that's the ceiling here. The way that he plays with speed, the puck plays that he was making towards the end of the year, I thought were better, more confident. And so that's a guy that, like, I think can have an impressive year, but I don't know if it's going to match the raw data and the numbers of a guy like Gaudreau. But I think, could you get 20 points out of Beecher next year? Like, if you can, that's a great year for him, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a guy that I think has a lot more to give, as are all three of these guys. But I do agree, Lohrei is the one that, in terms of a featured role, makes the most sense. I think you saw the most from him last year, for sure. Sticking with kind of the younger players, our next question is from the Boston Bastard, who asks, I haven't been watching too much Providence, but I believe Georgi Merkulov is more than ready, or just as ready, than Lysell to be a part of the Bruins main squad. He mentions both these players, but let's focus maybe on Merkulov. Do you see him making any impact on the main squad this year? Because I think we've talked about Lysell, expectations, all those things. You hope he gets a legitimate shot in preseason, playing with NHLers to kind of showcase his talent. But what do you make of Merkulov? Is he another guy that you view as kind of like Lysell, should be knocking on the door and they should give him an opportunity? Because I don't know about you, Ty, his 4 games sample size last year was a tremendous waste of time for all involved.
Waste of time. Absolute waste of time. He should get opportunities on this team. I think especially because you have guys like Morgan Geekie, like Trent Frederick, Justin Brazeau plays right wing. So like the left wing spot should be open for him somewhere on this roster. It's just a matter of, can he make it? If he doesn't make it, then close the book. It's over. It's going to be over for a number of reasons. One, he's going to say, I'm done. I want out. Like, I was an all-star a year ago. I put up a 30-35 season in the AHL, and I couldn't sniff, whatever, outside of a 6-minute game against the Columbus Blue Jackets. What a waste of time that was. Yeah. Oh, my God. So annoying looking back on that. Should have just played him with Pastrnak and Zacha. Like, why? Like, why not? Like, why? What are we doing here?
It was also like at the point of like the regular season where the dog days start setting in. So like this new guy who's racking up points in Providence here is like, something new. Okay. Well, they're just not going to play him, I guess.
Oh, never mind. Yeah, great. He's benched for the second half of the game. Awesome. So I do wonder if the Bruins bring in a PTO guy to make them kind of have to fight. Like, hey man, we're not going to give you this job. Oh, and by the way, you're fighting against a guy who just wants a job. He doesn't have a job right now, so you got to beat him out. I imagine they're going to do that, but I think Merkulov, like, he has to make it as a left winger or a center. I don't think he's going to be a right winger. No. There's a Twitter account that I follow. He does a tremendous job. I got to try to find the handle here real quick. Don't mind me. Okay, his name is CCC Middleton. That's his Twitter handle. He tracks lines and where guys line up, and he tracked Georgi Merkulov. He didn't have him lining up at right wing at any point in his pro career. He's never done it. And so I don't think you can look at him as a viable option to play right wing right now. He's quite literally never done it. So he's got to be a left winger or a center on this team.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, it's right. Like, could he push like the 3C job if you're looking at between him and Patra, and maybe that's the competition, and like you have the leeway with Patra of sending him down to Providence, obviously without any waiver or anything like that, and let him develop down there? Like, that'd be a welcome situation where you've got other guys pushed to different roles. But I think it comes down to the opportunity, and yes, it falls on the player to run with the opportunity, but I don't want to get to what is it? The September 22nd, that first Sunday where they played the Rangers first preseason game. I don't want Merkulov out there with, Mark McLaughlin and another Providence player, right? I want to see what if you're running him out to be a potential center, put him with Marchand. See what you can do, right? Put him with guys that are going to get him the puck. He's got a great shot. That's what you've seen from him down in Providence. Have some guys that can actually feed him the puck and see what he can do there. Because whether it's the minutes, whether it's where he was in the lineup, just it was nothing. It was watching Merkulov last year with the Bruins was like eating a stalk of celery, just empty calorie nothingness. There was nothing there to really glean off of. You see Lysell even in preseason games, and he didn't have a really strong showing last year in the preseason, but you could see the speed, you could see the creativity in spurts. Nothing there with Merkulov. So I think it's going to be important to put him in those spots to run with this opportunity. And if it's him and Patra, that'd be, again, a great problem to have if you're the Bruins. If two younger guys are pushing for one spot in the bottom six like that. So definitely, I think something worth keeping tabs on going into this camp.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other part of it too is it's got to happen, because I'm stressing that it has to happen, because if it doesn't with either one of them, let's say the doomsday is neither one of these guys makes team. They're both going to A, want to trade, and B, their value is going to be shot and no one's going to want to give you anything for them, because they're going to say, these guys haven't made your team in back-to-back years where they had legit chances to make the team. Nah, we're good. We'll give you a 6th-round pick. You don't want that, right? With a guy that, with a guy like Merkulov, Lysell, obviously a 1st-round pick, you don't want to have to do that. But a guy like Merkulov, who you effectively stole out of Ohio State University, when you saw the production he put up, and you're like, wow, okay, this guy, he might have found money here. You don't want to turn that dollar into a penny that you lose. You know what I mean? That would suck. And so I think you got to explore every avenue with these guys this camp and give them a legit chance to make the team and hope that they do.
Yes, absolutely. So definitely something worth keeping tabs on. We have 3 more questions to get to, Ty. Before we do that, take a quick break, hear from our good friends over at Game Time Tickets.
Fall is beginning, which means football is back. And nothing beats a college football atmosphere. With both college and NFL games, who doesn't love a good tailgate? Get to the game with Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. And Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. This fall, my friends and I are going to the Patriots-Titans game in Tennessee. How will we get tickets for the game? Game Time, of course. The super deal has been amazing to us in the past, and there's no doubt it will be great to us again. I just love the curated deals, which make it easier to find the best price on great seats. Some other features I love are the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Game Time Picks curation makes it easier to save more on sports, comedy, and theater. All-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. So, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Now, back to the show.
Once again, shout out to our good friends over at Game Time Tickets. All right, our next question is from Sean Rogette, who asks, do you think the Bruins are going to add a top 6 forward this year, i.e. at the deadline, or wait until next offseason? I'll let you lead off, Ty, but it does feel like it might depend on what you get out of a guy like Lysell, because that'd make the situation a lot easier, at least for this year, right?
Oh, 100%. And the other part of it too is I would have to see who else is who is truly out there for 2025 in terms of free agents. It's looking, I mean, you got some guys out there.
A certain German center hits the market, then
that'd be nice. Yeah. And you look beyond that, Yanni Gord, it's kind of like Sam Bennett. Like, I think it all depends who's out there. You know what I mean? Imagine Sam Bennett coming here. That'd be
I mean,
unbelievable.
listen, he would be such a great Bruin. I wouldn't give, how old is he now? Like 28, 29? I wouldn't give that dude a contract from what he's going to get, but would be a great Bruin.
Because I think he'd be like 30 probably. Because I think wasn't he part of the 2013 draft? So I think I want to say 2013, maybe 24. And either way, you'd be paying for the first 3 years of that contract. The final 4 would be a little dicey. Yeah. I think it all depends. Like, do they want to be in a position where they're shedding another first round pick or another second round pick? Like, I don't think they should do that still. I do think that they are in a reload phase. I think right now we're in year 2 of maybe 3 or 4 of them reloading. And so I would be very reluctant to move a high-end draft pick unless it's for a guy that has some term to his name. I think that, but that's rare, right? Like or it's a guy that you trade for and extend immediately, like you did with Hampus Lindholm. Like, then I'm like, okay, I get it. But they are a top 6 or maybe even a top 9er short right now, in my opinion, in terms of like viable, consistent scoring production. Geeky, Zaka, and Frederick are all coming off career years, but okay, what if those shooting percentages dip? Like Frederick's been on a 2-year bender, and to the point where I'm like, okay, maybe this just is what he is now. I don't know. Yeah. But like I think they're going to make an addition, but I would temper your expectations because I don't know if they're in the business right now, again, of going right back to trading first round picks like they're nothing, because they got Dean Letourneau. I think they still got to build a little bit there.
Yeah, absolutely. I do. Yeah, if it's like maybe like a bottom 6 kind of player, maybe like a Marcus Johansson or, some of these guys that maybe is a really good third line that you could put up if he's got a stronger supporting cast in the top 6 role, like someone more like that. But I do agree. Also, you look at like the amount of free agents out there next year, which is why also the Swayman contract will be fascinating in terms of just how much leeway you have. But I mean, running down the list of some guys, Trent Frederick, important one. Sean Corrali, bring him back in a top 6 role. But you got Patrick Kane's once again, Fabry, Verhaeghe, Bennett, let's see, Riley Smith, Yanni Gord, Taylor Hall would be hilarious. Leon Draisaitl, who's pretty good. Rantanen, Mitch Marner, John Tavares. You got a lot of guys out there that if you actually want to swing for the fences, and again, we run into this every single year where these guys are all listed now, and then 2 of them actually hit free agency, as we all are well aware of. But having a little bit of cap space next year where you don't have to relinquish draft capital, you're able to build your pipeline up a little bit more, does seem more amendable. And again, if for this year a guy like Lysell can show that he can at least hold his own in a role on the wing, makes it that much easier. So I think I'm sure what the Bruins are hoping plays out here, where if you got the money next year, you could spend, but if you have a homegrown guy that's not making a lot of money that can step in there for right now at least and has more room to grow, it's kind of the best of both worlds, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, but I think the Johansson comp is like a great one. That's the kind of trade I think they would end up making. And that was what? That was a second round pick and a third round pick, I think.
Something like that, yeah. So yeah. Not too bad. Yeah, don't give up first round picks for those kind of guys. Which, again, every year I feel like there's 10 to 15 to 20 goal scorers that do get dangled out there. So we'll see kind of how that all plays out.
I mean, sometimes the best deadline additions are those kind of guys. Like it's not like the top dog of the market who's out in the first round. No, it's the second and third tier guys that they have chemistry and it doesn't totally upend your entire team, and you get them in there and you get going. Like I loved, and this sounds preposterous, I know, because of the stars that they added this time. Versus, I loved Vegas's 2023 deadline way more than their 2024 deadline. Oh yeah, because I saw the 24 deadline when you bring in Hannafin and you bring in Hurdle, and I was going,
you're doing too much.
That's too much. That's too much. You got a good thing. What are you doing? You're bringing in too much. And then that's exactly how it played out. It felt like during the playoffs, watching them, I was like, oh, these guys have not played together. They don't know what their best tendencies are. They don't know their best plays. They don't know Like it was weird. And so sometimes adding that mid-tier guy is the way to go.
Absolutely. So we'll see how that all plays out moving forward this year. Next question is from G Rant, who asks us, what is more likely to occur? Brendan Bussey winning the backup job and Corpusalo getting waived to Providence, or Lysell winning the second right wing spot going into the regular season?
I'm gonna say the former. It's not that I'm down on Lysell. It's just there is a tangible benefit to you waive Corpusalo out of training camp, or you carry 3 goalies. But let's just say you waive Corpusalo. Like, you're buying some time because nobody's gonna claim that contract. Like nobody's gonna do it. And I think that Bussey and Corpusalo at this point might be neck and neck. And so, I mean, listen, I can be proven wrong on this. I've been wrong many a time, but nobody's going to touch that contract. Brendan Bussey is waiver eligible, so he'd have to go on waivers. The Chicago Blackhawks, just by the way, just lost their goalie for a little while, 7 weeks. Yeah. You know they'd claim him. You know they'd claim Bussey.
No,
and so there's a tangible benefit to riding with Brendan Bussey and seeing if he can hold on to the job. And now if he does, well, now you have 4 years of a guy in the minors. However, it really allows you to explore and get an answer as to where he's at in terms of his NHL readiness and can he be a factor for your team. The Bruins obviously have doubts. The fact they went out and got Corpusalo indicates that they have doubts about his game. But this is still an asset that I'd want to see in meaningful games, and I think that's the way to go. It just buys you more time, and it buys you some cap space as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. And as you said, that's not a knock against Lysell, who I could see winning the job, right? Like when you look at just his potential and all that. I just go off of what you said, and it's not like if that happens, right, like Bussey gets the job out of the gate and Corpusalo's waived, there's going to be like, this trade was a fucking disaster. It's like, I think it's more of, as you said, the logic of it and the business side of things and balancing the cap and dealing with rosters. In terms of maximizing your assets, if Corpusalo goes down to Providence and steadies his game and does well there, and he gets called back up later down the road, you'll take that. I'd rather you roll with Bussey, who, as long as he does well in the preseason, see what he has in a backup role. If he's got it and he's a guy that you can keep on the NHL roster, that's great. You got your backup. But if he labors and doesn't do it, at least you know. And then you could send him back down to Providence. You think he's a sunk cost at that point, and put in Corpusalo, who, again, people aren't thrilled about, but has played in the NHL, has room to bounce back potentially, right? Like, you give yourself options there. And so I think it more has to do with asset management and exploring all your options as opposed to, like, it being an outright indictment of, like, Corpusalo and that they went into this year expecting him to be a sunk cost or anything like that, right?
Right. But, like, this is why I've hated this contract since day one, or his inclusion in the deal. It's just not great value it's just not. Like, and that's the frustrating part about it. You're not going to save a ton of money by going with Bussey over Corpusalo. I think it's about, if you factor in the buried cap hit versus what Bussey's making, I think you save about $400,000. It's similar to when we were weighing the pros and cons of them waiving Derek Forbort. And I'm like, they're not going to do it. It's not worth the money. So there may be something similar here, but when you have a guy who is waiver eligible and a guy who has shown some promise in Brendan Bussey, I think it changes the dynamic just a little bit, right? And again, I just don't think anyone is going to claim Corpusalo. I just don't. Yeah. Like it's kind of a poison pill contract until proven otherwise, right? And so unless he has a training camp where he has like a 950 and he's let up 1 goal in 4 outings, it's like,
right.
All right. Like, but again, we got to see that before we believe in it. And there are things that go beyond just like the whole, goalie Bob can fix him. It's like, no, watching a lot of Ottawa last year, like there are things there that I'm like, I don't know if you can fix. I don't know if that's like no, he just needs a good coach. Like there are some structural problems with that home, I would say is what I say. I don't know if just bringing the best carpenter in is going to work. It's like the foundation might be kind of shitty. I don't know, man.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But I hope he does well.
Right.
Because I work in sports radio, and I understand like people think like I root for failure. I don't like writing about somebody when they're playing like ass. It's not fun. It's like a legitimately unenjoyable experience for me.
Yes, I remember. I think it's why a guy like Nick Foligno is such a good guy in terms of getting that perspective. Where I think obviously that first year where he was banged up, injured, his back was killing him. He like mentioned at one point, he's like, yeah, like we're very much aware of when we're playing like shit. Like it's like no one, even if you're an athlete who's super confident and has you have to have that mindset right of bouncing back and righting the ship. Like you're also very cognizant of when you're not playing well. Like it's not fun for anyone. So we do hope that Corbusello does bounce back. But great question from G Rant in terms of that dynamic and how those things kind of play out, because you could absolutely see the case of it being Bussy and Corbusello opening the year in the AHL. And our final question, Ty, is from Daniel McKay, who asks both of us, what is your hot take prediction going into the new year?
Hot take as in like what do I think?
Let's do it for like the Bruins, I guess, in terms of
what is the hottest take?
Yeah.
I think they're gonna win the division. I think they're the best team in their division. I think Florida's gonna take a step back. I think Tampa's gonna take a step back. And I think the Boston Bruins are the best team in their division. I firmly believe that.
Yeah, I have them going to the conference finals, and I have them finishing first in the Atlantic as well. And again, like you try to, I think every year I go into it, right, where I just look at the state of the team, and it's all about, I think, where you're finding, if on an individual basis, guys and the growth that they should have, and if they're in position to succeed. Like I remember looking like the team when we were, I think, probably like late August before the 22-23 year, where people were like, well, this team should be good. And I think we were both like, this team could be pretty friggin' nasty, actually. You just look at how many guys were in spots to succeed, where it's like, all right, can Pavel Zacha, where he's not driving play, give you 40-ish points? Yeah, you can do that. Like Taylor Hall, if he's your third line, could exploit matchups with Charlie Coyle. Yeah, you're pretty good there. Can like Linus Ullmark, who like his first year was kind of up and down, but had a really good high danger save percentage, build off of that with a stronger defense and having Krejci back and guys put into, I think it all works out. And I think you look at this team, right, where Elias Lindholm, who isn't an 80-point guy, but should be a 60-point guy while playing really good defense and really good face-off numbers, how that domino effect will help your team, how a guy like Zadorov should add, different elements while also, I think, having more room to grow there. Can Lohrei in the third pair role succeed? Can your fourth line with guys like Max Jones and Beecher and Kastelik and maybe even Brazeau show more there as well? Like, I think kind of look across the lineup, Frederick, like Geeky, all these players, it's not like a murderer's row by any means. They maybe don't have the outright star power as like a team like the Panthers, where like 1 through 5 or 6, you're like, ooh, right? Or like even Tampa Bay, where top heavy, yes, but then you look further down the line, you're like, what AI generated character are you?
Right, right.
I do think you look at just the way this team is positioned to build off of last year, and I think that was such an important thing for it being a bridge year to have the run that they did, continue to put together good performances, and building off of that moving forward. I think they're in a great spot. Like, I think it's going to be a really fun year. I think having guys like Zadorov, however you think of them, as like a player, how much money they're worth, is a lot of fun to watch and should add kind of that element. I can't wait for that first game against the Panthers on October 8th. It's going to be a great way to open there. The NHL schedule makers finally made like a good decision with one of their first games. So I'm excited, and I do think this team has a lot of room to grow, and barring injuries, stuff like that, they should be in a position to continue to take steps forward moving forward, which if you're a Bruins fan, should be pretty exciting. When you look at how miserable people were 2 summers ago when Bergeron retires, Krejci, and you thought this team was on the decline. They should be right in the mix again, which in hockey, it's kind of all you need, right?
And the other part of it too is that they were 5 points away from winning the President's Trophy, and they had 3 guys that hit the 60-point mark a year ago. 3 guys: Marchand, Coyle, Pastrnak. By the way, Pastrnak had 110 points. There is a 43-point gap between he and in second place Brad Marchand. Like, if even anything slightly ticks the other direction this year, like their way, I should say, scoring wise, they're going to be in it, right? And so that's what I would say. Yeah, they were for a while there. They were kind of OTL merchants, but the structure of their team, I thought, for a team that had no cap space and no notable additions in terms of what they could bring in, they were in it, right? And so they've addressed two areas of concern. They may have a new one in net by going from Korpisalo or Bussy, going from Ullmark to Korpisalo or Bussy. However, the structure of their team and what they do, it works in the regular season, and so I do think they're going to be the best team in their division.
Yes, it should be a very, very fun season. We're very excited that finally, after what feels like months, years,
the longest offseason ever. This was the longest offseason ever.
It's been terrible, and it was. Listen, it was. Again, the problem is that all of the offseason gets mashed together, so it's like 10 days of hell, where it's like you can't even like. We're locked in terms of the draft and free agency, but you can't even like. It's almost so much stuff that you can't even digest it. It's like, oh, they got Lindholm and Zadar. Like, I know this is good, but you still have to worry about dev camp. You got to like still look at like the Letourneau stuff. You just have had like 2 months of just downtime of really nothing going on except for the one story of Swayman, which I think everyone is sick of listening to at this point. So,
dude, I can't tell you how pissed I was that they pulled the trigger on the Ullmark trade like 5 minutes before Game 7, and I was just like, "You son of a!" I was so angry.
I didn't even get to like enjoy that game. Like,
I don't remember anything about it. I was writing all game. Yeah. Sucked. It was not fun. It was. I'm sitting there on the couch and I'm watching the game, and I'm like, "Oh, all right, here we're about to go." My phone starts buzzing. Hey, Ullmark's getting traded. I'm like, "Oh, why now? Why now?" I was so angry. I'll be angry about it for and now I'm like texting like, okay, who's in the trade? What's happening? What's going on? And then I'm like,
Jacob Chikrin? Nope.
Yeah. I'm like, Edmonton scored. Okay, Florida scored. And I'm like, all right, I gotta bang out this column. I'm like, this is hell. I just want to enjoy the hockey game. That's all I want to do. I couldn't do it.
Thankfully, by next week we will all be back at Warrior watching hockey once again. Captain's practice gets underway next week, so we finally have actual tangible stuff to talk about at long last. So no more speculation or anything like that moving forward. So excited to talk hockey another season with you, Ty, moving forward. Before we let you go, where can we read your stuff? Here, you on the airwaves, all that good stuff.
You can find me at 985thesportshub.com and on the air, 985 the Sports Hub. Listen on the app if you'd like as well. You can also find me on X at _Ty Anderson, where I will be doom scrolling and trying to bring levity to any situation that presents itself.
Very good, yes. And you can read my stuff over at boston.com and the Boston Globe. We have covered every step of the way this upcoming season. You can follow me on X, Twitter, whatever it's called, at Conor Ryan _93. So thank you guys for listening. This is episode 255 of Poke the Bear. You fans have a great rest of your week.